meeting to order. You gotta hit the item. All right,
There we go.
now we're all set. All right, and roll call has been noted. If we go on to item 3, which is approval of the minutes from July 26, 2023, is there a motion? I'll move. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Vic. And any corrections? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, appearances, there's no one in the room, and it doesn't look like there's anybody on Zoom for appearance section, so we can move on to we'll double check the waiting room.
Yep.
Huh?
Marianne
Oh.
Reed is here.
Oh.
The chief
So
is logged
Larry,
in.
Larry, Chris.
Oh,
and
oh no,
Kurt.
Chris is iPhone, I'm sorry. I thought it's the chief.
Almost everybody's here except Jim.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Hi, Larry.
Hello,
That looks like Mary Ann, or not Mary Ann, it looks like Larry, but
yeah. I'm trying to remember how to change her name.
no worries, no worries. Good
I
to
don't
see you.
think anybody will mistake her for me.
All right, we can update roll call, and there is no unfinished business, so we can move on from that. Item 6, which is operating budgets for the 4 different departments, and we'll just roll through them. And historically, it's been helpful to kind of just allow the department to kind of roll through kind of everything, and then kind of jot your notes if you have questions about a line item. Then after they kind of go through, we can go back through if there are certain questions. Because I found that sometimes, at least my questions usually get answered, and I end up slowing them down if I ask it and while they're still going. So if everybody doesn't mind kind of going that direction, I think it will help us be efficient. And Jerry, you want to start us off with fire protection?
Absolutely. The budget's in front of you. Mayor's directive was a no more than a 1% increase on non-personnel costs. So everything from line 133 up is personnel costs. Those are set by Mark with whatever numbers he chooses to use for health insurance, wages, that sort of thing. The only increase outside of any type of wage increase that he figured in there is the overtime budget went up by $500. I will take a moment to mention that that is a very small overtime budget. We do our best to stay within that, but it's not a lot of money and not a lot of hours. So this year we're actually pretty well on track because we're actually getting reimbursed for a lot of our special events, which is good. Below line 133, so 134 on down, very few changes. What we've got is sufficient in most cases. There are areas I would like to increase, but they're not critical increases, so I kept them out of this year's budget. The only line item that went up is equipment maintenance and repair. Added a couple more $1,000 into that. I've got a few years behind me now of what the actual costs are for particularly the fire apparatus repairs, and they're usually $8,000 to $10,000 a repair. So we've increased that steadily over the last few years. As you can see, last year it was almost $60,000, $10,000 repair on the ladder. DOT inspections, pump tests, the aerial had to be recertified last year for the first time ever. So it'll be done every 5 years. And that alone is a $8,000 cost just to have it recertified. So it went over significantly last year. This year, don't let that number fool you. That number will definitely go up to the $20,000 mark and probably a little bit above, but not significantly like last year. So the last 2 years, it was 39 and 59. There was a lot of set aside maintenance, I'll leave it at that had been neglected over the years. We took our second engine in. There was a laundry list of things that needed to be fixed that had been deemed not critical, so they just let it go. So we fixed all of that because engine 2 had its issues, so we wanted to make sure our second engine was functioning. Other than that, we decreased fuel by a couple $1,000. What I found after last year is there were some cards that were being misattributed to the fire department. So what you're seeing there is a much more realistic number, the 3,400. So we're sitting at 8,000 for next year. Other than that, no significant changes. It came across as a 0% increase, so it is a $500 increase from over last year for non-personnel costs.
Any questions?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I was gonna ask about this and others is worker compensation. Is that a budget item?
It is, I believe it's paid through the city and not through individual departments. I think city admin has the workers' compensation and they pay it directly because it aggregates.
Okay,
So if we have like a lost time injury, it aggregates against the city and not against an individual department. So we don't budget for it, it's budgeted elsewhere
okay.
in the general fund.
Is that true for car insurance or whatever kind of insurance you have for fire insurance?
Yeah, everything's done through Civic.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Repairs, I know I asked this often. Are there items that are not repairs, but purchases that really should be, or could be allocated to capital?
Generally not, they're almost all repairs. Same thing with like the annual tests and stuff, they're not a 5-year program. Anything that I buy for the trucks that may break goes under durable equipment and capital budget.
Okay, cool.
I have a line item just for that.
Some of our general philosophy has been if it's gonna last more than a year. A couple of years, let's have it spread out and paid by residents of those multiple years versus a single.
Yeah, I can say under the equipment maintenance and repair, it is all repair work. It's not, there's no purchasing done under that.
Okay,
Perfect. The repairs eat up enough money.
I figured, yeah. All right,
I have a question.
yeah, go for it, Angela.
Thank you. Chief, I'm looking at your professional development and you haven't spent a lot. I know you have been very good in finding ways to make sure that your staff is able to, and yourself, able to go for professional development, and wondering where you think you'll be, and is that number realistic that you have in the budget now?
So because we have a divided budget, the bulk of the education comes on the EMS side. Since our folks are combined, that's where the bulk of the conferences come from. The professional development on this side generally covers state exams for firefighter 1, firefighter 2. There'll be a $400 item going in there, which is 6 books for pump operator, which we're starting up tomorrow night here for 6 people. So the fire side, I generally limit the textbooks, testing, that sort of thing. Any conference work gets pushed into the EMS side. And that includes, we generally send people we'll send a person to the fire inspectors conference if they want to go. We'll send people to, myself and 2 staff are going to EMS World in like 3 weeks. We send people to FDIC, which is the biggest one out in Indianapolis. We send 2 or 3 people a year to that. And that all comes out of the EMS side.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? See none, we can move on to ambulance.
Same story, different department.
Mhm.
You'll notice we actually decreased our budget this year. So we had a significant grant from the state, which paid for some grant overtime and some LT hours, along with some equipment purchases, which is where you generally see the blank lines. You'll notice like in the EMS assistance program, 342, it's $24,000 this year. That's the flex grant that we got, along with the extra ARPA flex that we got. So it bought a lot of extra equipment for us. Everything from, again, line 133 up is personnel costs and set by Mark. What you will see is line 119 is decreased by $10,000. That's our LTE wage pool, basically, for our part-time staff that come in. The bulk of that reduction is because of the loss of the grant funding. We had extra money in there because of grant funding this year. So that went down. The only items that really increased on this is The medical director, there's an expected 2% raise on that every year. It's an annual cost for the medical direction for the department. And dues and subscriptions went up by $500 only because everything seems to increase in price and not decrease in price. I have yet to get a subscription or a dues that has gone down in price, unfortunately. I'd like to, but medical supplies stayed the same. Fuel, again, we dropped a little bit because again, we had some cards that were misattributed to fire and EMS last year. So it's a more realistic number this year. Other than that, I'm happy to answer questions. We came out with a 1% decrease just due to the reduction with the flex grant and no fund balance being needed this year.
When it comes to grants, I know you're probably fairly aggressive about it, but is there enough time to really go after all the grant opportunities or?
I will say I will generally do that when I find the 10th and 11th day in a 7-day week, so.
That's what I'm wondering, are there grant opportunities
There
that
are-
don't have the time to?
There are always
Go
grant opportunities, there's a balance between whether it's worth applying for. If it's local, I generally will, some of the national stuff. I'll just say it's complex, just because, there's a lot of grants I could write at the federal level, but it takes a lot of input from the council, not just the public safety committee, and most of them are time sensitive. By the time they open up and I can bring the actual documents and say, here's what I want to write, I have to submit it within a week or 10 days. It's a very fast turnaround. So the safer grants, stuff like that pay for recruitment and retention and a lot of things for the volunteer side, I can plan stuff out, but I can't do anything with it until they give me the notice of funding. But then you're on a very tight clock to get it done. So there are other grants out there. As I find them, I write for them.
Right. Hey, do you know of other fire departments that are structured maybe a little differently, that they're able to take more advantage of grants?
Folks with more full-time administrative staff have time to be able to do that.
So it's actually just better staff. Okay,
And I do have assistants, one of my, is he a lieutenant? Yeah, he's a lieutenant, so he is a chief grant writer for Boys and Girls Club. So he's
Oh.
very helpful in reading through the grants and tweaking them and make sure that we're submitting them correctly and with the right language in them. It's a crapshoot whether I have him there to be able to look at it before I submit them, so.
okay. Enough said, thank you.
Other questions? The only one I had was, last year, it looks like there was some fund balance that got applied, was that a planned application?
Yes,
Okay, and was it to offset grant funding?
it was to offset some of the increases that we had to put in here, like the medical director and that sort of thing, until our revenues caught up to.
Okay, because the 30,000 is really gonna be caught up by ambulance revenue.
Yes.
Which we've talked about before, which should be just by the new billing software and all that.
Yes,
And medical director. It's not new, but is it new assigned here?
yes, we broke it out separately because for 35 years, we had Dr. Yost, who was the medical director. Didn't provide a lot. We paid about $6,000 on part-time wages for him. I saw him twice after I started. Wasn't here much. Our current medical direction. So in Dane County, you go one of two directions now. You can either go with DW Consortium or you go with MEP, which is St. Mary's driven. The consortium is about 4 times the cost. It runs about 50 grand to get in there annually. MEP is great. We all operate off the same protocols. And the real benefit we have is our medical director lives here. So she lives down in Lincoln.
Yeah,
So she's here a lot.
Yeah.
They're very proactive. They're here every training. They're here in between trainings. They're here, they show up on scenes and, which is fabulous. It's a really, really nice thing for our staff to be able to have. A much better working relationship than Dr.
Yeah.
Yost.
you talked about how she was writing script at that fire on Owen Road. So
Yep,
she
we
was
set
there.
up a mobile pharmacy at Heritage.
Yeah. So that's marvelous.
All on her own. Yeah, she just came on her own. We hadn't even requested her yet. And she showed up and freaked out the police officers.
Yeah.
Somebody driving up in their personal vehicle and But she does a great job for us, so that's the annual fee for the services that we get from SSS, not just her, but there's 8 or 9 staff and there's 4 or 5 other doctors that are involved. So one of the big benefits we have is we had a case today with the gentleman who wrecked his scooter out on Royal. We can pick up the phone and call and get a medical director on the phone, not somebody in the ER. They hand the phone off every 6 hours, and it's the time they have it, they're not assigned to the ER. So they're not dealing with other patients. They'll answer the phone and actually have the time to actually work through stuff and see if there's things that we can try to do to persuade people to go to the hospital, don't want to go to the hospital.
Yes. Thanks. All right. Not seeing any other questions. We can move on to dispatch.
Okay.
One big ringer here, I'm sure.
Yeah, their dispatch is pretty consistent with last year, with the exception of the wage and benefit increase that is hitting all departments. One area we did have a slight increases in the overtime. That's $600, so that's pretty minimal. And yeah, that's health insurance. So professional development remains at $1,000 from last year. Currently, it says to date we're at nothing, but I know we have actually spent, and so it's possible those are 2022 numbers. I don't know if you noticed, that is the only spreadsheet that says 26 to date 6/30 of 2022. All of the rest are 6/30 of 2023. So I think that amount is incorrect. So from my recollection, I think the trainings that we have paid for this year are somewhere in the $500 to $600 range. So we don't have uniform allowance anymore, so that is still zero. With the state of Wisconsin, our criminal record checks, those we complete for any applications that come into the city for alcohol licensing or transient merchant licensing. And we have not had an increase in license fees or charged to us from the state. So that is good. And so that's staying consistent. Our large increase, which you can see, is for our service contracts. One of our service contracts is through our MPSIS group, which is that's basically our record system, our CAD, all of that is provided through our MPSIS group, which is comprised of Monona, Fitchburg, Middleton, Sun Prairie, and Verona. And so we share a records management system, and there are fees associated with being in that group that have increased over this last year. Also behind the emergency communications budget, you see this MOPD 2023 budget compared to 2022. That is the actual MPSIS budget numbers. Okay. So that's just kind of to show you where these numbers are coming from last year to this, and why there's an increase there. There is an increase just in those fees of $10,845. So that $104,773 is also comprised of, we have DaneCom fees in there, we have service contracts with General Communications for radio equipment. That is all in that number, the $104,773. So those are costs that we can't control. And that's why we're seeing a significant increase there. And then our dispatch supplies remain at $800. So that's the same as last year. And I think we historically haven't quite spent that, but we've been close, and it seems to work well for us. So with the exception of of the wages, the increase for that dispatch budget, is 6%.
All right, questions? Cory?
How many people are salaried here in communication?
That would be 5 full-time employees.
Okay.
And then we also have like our part-time wages, so we have 2 part-time dispatchers.
Okay.
And then usually filling vacations and other.
Yeah, when they
Okay.
can fill in, if we can get part-time, we always take the
If
part-time
not,
over paying.
You're looking at,
Sometimes you see me, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um. And if I remember correct, most of those service contracts, if not all of them. Are multi-year contracts, so it's not like we have year to year,
our general communications are year to year.
okay.
And MPSIS, that's also a year,
Yes.
yeah, Danecom, we get billed on that twice a year. Yeah,
But I thought we were in that agreement for a chunk of time. We might get billed yearly,
yes,
but I think
that's,
we're committed to
that could very well be,
chunks of time.
yeah. We just get billed annually at the first year.
Meaning there's a lot in here that we can't mess with. Cause we've already committed to it.
Yes.
But, and like, undoing the records management system would be not a wise decision.
Correct.
Unless we had a really good game plan.
Yes, yes. We actually just did change our records management system at the end of 2020. We were required to update that because we were switching from UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting, to NIVERS reporting. And so that was quite an undertaking, so it would,
But it was all within that group.
it's all
still,
within that,
Yep.
group, yes, so.
Which
to-
is, does
to
all the
switch out
heavy
and do
lifting.
that, yes, on
Yeah.
our own would be quite the task.
Awesome. Right? Did I spark any questions? Anybody? Alright, seeing none, we will move on to law enforcement.
Again, law enforcement, as Chief McMullen said, up through 133 is all associated with salaries and benefits. And so those were numbers given to us. Our professional development. Get my ruler out here. We have, because of, some of the constraints last year, we have done our best to keep our professional development as low as possible, but obviously we do have required trainings each year. We have to do our firearms training, our DAT, defense and arrest tactics training. Every other year we have our emergency vehicle and operation training, so we do have required trainings. And we do, like I said, our best to try to keep those costs low. Our 2023 budget was $8,800 and we're planning to try to keep that the same for 2024. Uniform allowance, that is a contractual amount. And so we don't really have any control over that, between what we allow for each officer each year for uniforms. Plus there is some built-in should we have to outfit a new officer with that, so. That also includes our ballistic vests. Those are on a replacement schedule as well every 5 years, and those run about $1,000 a piece now. So. The telephone, that's to date, it says 511. I think that number is likely off some as well. But that gets coded over by City Hall, so I don't
Yeah, I
ever
think we're
really
meeting
see
some of
the.
yours, cause
Yeah.
ours is up
Okay.
where it should be, so. think
Yeah,
we
so I don't-
should-
I don't think that number is accurate either, but they've, advised us that 3,000 is an appropriate number to allow for our portion of the telephone usage, and so that will carry forward to 2024. Service contracts for office equipment, we have a copier and dispatch, and so that will cover any fees associated with that for 2024, as it did in 2023. There's no increase. Office supplies, you know, we need batteries and supplies. And so that $1,800 is the amount that we're also asking for 2024. No postage. Police supplies, $10,000 is the amount in 2023, and I don't believe that number is correct either for the year to, well, that was actually June, so I guess taking into
Yeah.
consideration that was almost 3 months ago. 2 months ago, yeah. That could be a little lower, so that stays the same. We're not asking for any increase over last year. As well as the police operating expense, $4,000, not asking for any increase in that. The equipment maintenance and repair, we've been able to keep that relatively low at $1,250, and are asking for that to stay the same for 2024. Information technology, equipment and repair, again, the same for 2024, that's $1,250. Vehicle maintenance and repair, though, is an area where we also have seen a substantial increase. If you'll note that number in the June 30th to date, we were almost exceeding the budget amount in that category, so that minimal $500 increase, we hope to keep our vehicles not having to have additional service in 2024, but again, with the increase in costs, we're hoping that $500 will help with the budget numbers. Police equipment is the same for 2024, $5,500. And I think there is a missing zero in our fuels and additives column. I think that should be 39,000, which is just a $500 increase over the prior year. So with the two increases that are highlighted in the dark gray, that's $1,000 increase over prior year, above and beyond what the salaries and benefits come in. So I don't know about that bottom number. I was gonna try to do some math here during the meeting, but I don't have a 10K to do that. But given those are the only two increases, and it's approximately $1,000, I think we're still within that. The percentage,
1%.
what we're supposed to be here.
Questions?
I have, with police overtime. I'm just wondering, at what point is it better to have additional staff rather than overtime? The 100,000, you could at least get one, maybe two people.
Maybe one,
$80,000 is a cop.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
and
Sorry to put a
so,
number on them, but.
yeah,
I didn't realize that.
so, yeah, I think they've actually looked at that, and paying the overtime is actually more beneficial, because even if you have that extra person, it doesn't mean that they're going to be in a position to cover some of the vacation days and sick days and overtime days that we have.
The overtime counts for a lot of different activities that can't always be planned for. So,
Right.
for example, emergency detentions.
Mhm.
So if someone needs a commitment underneath the chapter 51 and they need to be transported.
Right, which is up to Oshkosh,
It's
so that's probably
Two
five,
officers,
yeah, two officers, about 5 hours.
5
round
hours
trip.
total.
Yeah,
By the
Plus-
time they get up there and get back.
a
and
lot of
paperwork
times we end up sitting at the hospital with them too.
Before they get to
beforehand.
go.
So we've seen medical clearance times anywhere from, I'll say an hour, but I don't think it's ever been that short, up to 8 hours, where we've sat with people at the hospital. And so we have to also maintain our staffing here on the streets. So we may have a substantial amount of overtime that goes into an emergency detention.
Okay,
Um,
and that happens pretty regularly. It's not an occasional event.
yeah, I mean, it happens more than we'd like it to,
Sure.
but, I wouldn't. It seems to go in waves. We can go a period of time and not have one, and then we can have 3 in a week period. It's. You know, just something we can't plan for, and, you know, we get returns from Journey Mental Health, and it's, you know, we have to act on those regardless, so.
Okay. Have to be nimble.
Mhm,
Thank you.
that's correct.
Well, the hiring of the part-time officers recently was a way to try to get at what
Yes.
you can control,
Yeah.
right?
And so we did hire, a part-time officer, and then when he was set to start, he unfortunately suffered an injury and was delayed. So we didn't have the benefit of that, yet for this year.
Are you feeling in part stress from the one officer who's on military duty right now?
We have. It's, I mean, we definitely notice the difference.
Right,
So, you know, when people are taking their time off, there's always overtime. We don't have somebody to kind of backfill those positions with her being gone.
yeah,
I think it's going to be even more of a crunch as we, are coming up on 2 officers who are retiring before the end of the year.
wow, that's right,
So then I think we're gonna feel that even more.
wow. But you'll be able to hire at a lower rate of pay.
Well, the starting is lower.
Yeah.
But,
Okay,
If you're gonna do a recruit, I mean,
right,
what?
if, right.
if that's what ends up getting hired by.
Yeah.
Police fire commission, I mean, they might not hire an officer that's new, it might be.
right, we may have a
Oh,
lateral,
veteran.
so they
Oh,
may come in
Yeah, what
and
makes you say that right now, Brett?
hire.
I don't know, I'm just saying. That happens. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean,
okay. I get you. All right,
the part-time solution was really one of the strategies, because the unpredictable piece regarding emergency detentions or other incidents that have just caused overtime that you can't plan for. You're already
Yeah,
involved,
calls, yeah,
you're already involved in the call, you can't say, well, I gotta leave.
yeah,
Um,
and oftentimes with large scale incidents, we end up having to call additional officers in to just to have the
Oh.
resources.
and you end up paying salary for that?
Overtime, well, to our
To your
staff,
people. Okay,
correct,
Yeah,
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 anytime they're called in outside of their regular hours, it's overtime.
oh, gotcha, okay. Thank you.
the only question I had, which I think I should know the answer better than I do. When it comes to vehicle maintenance repair, what happens when our vehicles suffer damage in the general day-to-day operations? Cause it's,
It's happening.
Yeah, are you like, are you talking like body damage and crashes or,
we'll take the simple version.
okay?
A hit door panel or something.
Sure, so, those are insurance claims. However, we are on the hook for $1,000 deductible. So that does not come out of this portion of the budget. They have, I don't know what account exactly it comes out of, at City Hall, but they do,
Insurance claims are coming out of there. And then, my guess that's just figured into the SIGMIC cost of
I
how
think
many
so.
vehicles, blah, blah, blah. that-
Yeah, I've never seen the deductible hit our budget, it's,
yeah,
it's comes out of the general fund from somewhere, so, the claim we just had on engine 2, they paid $7,000 deductible. It just gets covered, so.
And any of the more minor stuff, our wonderful mechanic is taking care of.
yeah, anything that, you know, for instance, maybe a plastic guard of some sort, you know, that maybe has gotten cracked or something, we do have our mechanic from DPW who he can, you know, cut it off if it needs to be cut off, and he can determine if that is an appropriate way to respond to that, or, you know, does it need to be replaced? Can it operate without that, without causing any further damage or issues with the vehicle? So we do lean on him quite a bit for those
That
things.
sounds very handy.
Having taken a tour down there, he's the guy to go see.
Okay. Who is that?
Ron,
Is quite the amazing fabricator.
Yeah.
Do it all, basically.
Yeah, he can make anything,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
for sure. You talked about ballistic vests are out of here. We talked about ballistic shields in capital.
capital, correct.
Are ballistic vests in here because they're assigned to individuals and not shared?
That's probably part of it, but it's also. And maybe that's a good question, but it's also part of the contract, and so I think that,
Oh, okay,
you know,
it's a assigned part of the uniform to individual officers, probably.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. If they give them a go, they take it,
they do. Yeah, I mean,
that's why it's.
if it's, yeah,
It's an intimate piece of,
right, and it, you know, I mean, it's measured to fit them, so it's not like you can just say,
assignment to.
Yeah,
someone else,
right.
yeah. Okay, perfect, that will help, because I know people are gonna see it. They might hear it twice, and that helps everyone. Awesome. Any other questions pop up for people? Is that hand, is that cursor, or is that hand? Someone's hand. It's the cursor.
cursor.
All right, and we will need, a motion on all four budgets. And it is fine since there didn't seem to be any potential, unless someone is trying to make a motion for or an individual change on an individual budget. It could be a motion to, recommend approval or move to city council the budgets for, and then list the four departments. And then we can move all four together at once, maybe.
You want a non-council person to do that?
You got it.
All right,
Make the motion.
we got a motion, do we got a second?
Second.
All right. Any corrections, additions? All right, seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? All right, wonderful. All operating budget items have moved forward and we're good to go there.
Thank you.
Update on any diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives or efforts. Anything unique other departments? No. All right. And reports, anything key highlights from fire?
Well, we haven't heard anything down this month, which is great. And I'm back from
No
vacation.
training
so,
birds, you mean, no training
Uh,
birds, they call that.
But I can tell you the busy year continues. I looked at the numbers before I came upstairs, and as of today, we're at 125 calls this month. Between fire and EMS and missed calls. We've had 15 missed calls, where our neighbors have had to come help us out. We're seeing less this half of the month. Now I'm back from vacation. You'll see I'm in this type of wear much more often because I'm helping to cover the second ambulance. So last month I was on the ambulance for 244 hours. This month I'm scheduled for 166. So whenever I have an extra staff person, I try and get that second ambulance in service. Helped us yesterday. We had a collision on Monona Drive. We transported one, which ended up being a Madison call, which I wanted to join in. But at the same time, we had another EMS call, so we had both ambulances in service, which is great. We have 9 new volunteers coming for their first Tuesday in September. And we'll get them started. We have a pump operator class. We have 6 of our folks that are interested, starting tomorrow night here at the station.
That's amazing.
Yes, it really is. We're hopefully get engine 2 back in time so we can have both engines used. So what we're looking at is on Thursday nights, we're making sure we have an aerial operator on shift during class, so we can use both engines for training. So we don't have 6 people waiting to use the same engine to do the
Over and
skills.
over again.
So far we're covered for the first 6 weeks of the class, but, yeah, it's just been busy.
Good to hear some new volunteers,
Yes,
Yeah.
all Monona.
1 or 2 from Monona. Hard to get folks from Monona. With the 2 demographics we have demographics like Connie and Dan who have been here forever. And we have new families that come in that just don't have the time to volunteer. So we do have some students that are living in the area. We have a teacher from Monona Grove that was our last group we brought on, very active. Yeah, our last group we brought on, we've maintained 60% of our volunteers, which is big numbers for volunteers. Most departments are on about 10 to 20% retention after the first year, and we're at 60% with this group, which is pretty good. So if I can get 60% of our new folks, then I'm pretty happy. That brings us up to 38 volunteers.
Good to hear.
Wow.
The last thing I have is the full-time staff position that's open. Send an email to Tom, figured he might be on vacation.
I think it's.
We're gonna do an internal process. I've got a candidate that's interested, it's qualified. Been running the last couple months as an LTE, been turning out real well. So we'll push them up to PFC for their interview and hopefully be able to fill that by October 1st. She'll help reduce my hours on the ambulance. So. Which would be
That'd be
really,
really good.
yeah.
that's all I get.
And 15 missed calls, those are all aiming.
Yes. Though to be fair, and that's part of what we've been discussing with the operating reference stuff. We're finding it more and more difficult to get responses during the day at all. We had let's see, it was in the first weekend in August, we had a mutual aid call from McFarland asking for an engine and a chief. And I had 2 people show up, and both of them were my assistant chiefs. The next morning, we had a P&B call here. We had to call an engine from McFarland to come help. We literally had nobody responding other than our full-time staff.
On a weekend?
On a weekend.
Wow.
We had the car accident that we just had yesterday. The gentleman that called the report is one of my captains. I had to send him to get the engine because we had nobody responding. Because we had so much stuff, so many fluids, we needed the engine for the oil dry. So I sent him from the scene to go get the engine and bring it back. It's tight, and it's always tight in August. But it's been a slim month for responses. Thankfully, we still have Dan and Bob around, so.
Yeah. Dan's usually fly down the hill before I even hear anything. Like,
Oh, we already know.
Yep.
I have an idea, I don't know if it really will work, but when it's coming up with the operating budget referendum. All these hours that you have in terms of volunteer time. If it could be given a cash value, so people know what we're getting for what we're already paying for. You know, and how we're stretching our budget with volunteers. I think that's kind of a selling point, don't you?
It can be, I think that's part of, that's part of the challenge of a volunteer paid department. Is you balance, it's a balancing game of highlighting the volunteers as what you're getting that you're not paying for. Sometimes has sent, in previous years, sent the message to volunteers that they're not as appreciated.
Oh, okay, that could have 2 impacts.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
Which has, he's in a difficult position because he's got to also represent a volunteer base that has a certain reason why they're volunteering in fire and EMS. And then you also have a paid base and a career-driven mindset of the professionality of the work. And that's a very difficult balance to be.
Very complex, yes.
Okay,
But what you said, Alder, I've already got some of that in mind, so.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
There's
especially the
ways
dollar
to
values of.
Yeah.
Jerry rolling on the engine to not ambulance, like, every hour he's out there, he's not doing other things that,
well, it works both ways again, right?
yeah, I mean, that definitely, I mean, I think you were absolutely spot on, of like. When it's all hands on deck for everything, then you have no time to plan. And do all the other work, and that's part of your
So
point,
there are other costs with that, yeah, I get you.
but the volunteer one can get tricky in this particular case.
Yeah, well, leave it in your trusted hands.
You'll be seeing more soon, so.
Okay, I'm sure.
We're all
Jerry?
Gearing up for that.
Jerry, I get a question. How many total members on the department and how many are volunteers?
All total with the ones we're bringing on board will be at 55 with, as I say, 38 volunteers. Call number 7 today, I think.
Wow. Past accident time.
Yeah. Could be.
Right.
They're heading up to the high school, probably a heat
Oh.
issue with the,
Oh,
well, I tried to convince the guy,
Did they do athletics today?
oh yeah.
Oh, they didn't call it off.
No, they-
Oh, that's.
Game, they moved the start
Oh.
time to 7:30 tomorrow night, so they'd be just outside the window of the heat warning.
Oh, brother.
But they're gonna have it, supposedly, so we'll have an ambulance up there, but no, it's in the gym, so.
Looks like they fixed the air conditioning in here.
yes,
But,
it has. cool
okay, it's not heat
sense.
related, it's a shoulder
Oh, okay,
dislocation
good.
from volleyball. so.
Okay, good.
No big deal.
Okay, no big deal.
How bad can you be here, so.
All right, highlights from police.
I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to visit us at National Night Out, but,
Yes, it
It
was
was-
amazing.
thank
It
you.
was
It was, our community resource officer did a great job of putting that together, and we appreciate all the efforts of fire and parks that helped us do that. We had other, Public Works was there, bus service, tow company,
Dane County Emergency Management.
yep, Dane County Emergency Management was there, their boat patrol, yeah.
It was a great event.
We had a really, really great event, and we're very appreciative of our partner communities that sent resources and our local resources here that participated with that, so. Other than that, PFC did hold interviews for 2 potential candidates to fill at least one of the retirement positions further on, but and approvals. So I won't steal Joe's thunder.
I think you already did.
I'm sorry. So, yes, so I believe an offer has been extended, but here we go again.
We don't do that one.
That's an engine attachment to the golf. So,
All right.
Alright, so,
I know one question I repeatedly got asked. And I just said, go read the paper like everybody else does. Antlers,
Oh,
Antlers, Beltline and Monroe Broadway, and all 3 incidents connected, not connected.
I have to think for a minute.
This
Are
was
you
the
talking
big fight that
about?
then led to
Oh,
drones and other activity.
so. Wait, I don't.
There was an
Um,
accident out on the Beltline that,
well, there was a very large. There was a 5-car and then 2 separate 2-car
Yeah.
accidents, so that was last Friday.
Yep.
On the 18th, that was not related to, I mean, that was a disabled vehicle in the roadway.
okay,
And then as vehicles were trying to maneuver around
they
it,
all got it.
the crash happened, and then there were 2 additional crashes
Okay.
as a result. Of the first.
Initially, the media was connecting the items together.
No,
I'm like, I don't know,
No.
just keep your eye on the media.
the antlers, are you talking about the,
The fight that then led to someone going to the hospital with
Okay.
the drone activity and.
so
police-
that, I think, happened overnight,
Okay,
Friday into Saturday morning.
it sounds like
And
Madison
so-
was maybe taking
so that
Point.
is Madison, that side of the roadway is Madison, and so yes, that was their incident. But our canine officer assisted with that and tracked the suspects to an address in the area there where
Madison took care of it.
Madison, yeah, Madison was right there with us, and that was their investigation, so they proceeded with that.
And it used our drone or a drone to find him? Is that what you were saying?
Our drone was, I think it was our drone that was like our drone operator was also on duty. And so they did utilize
Okay,
that,
okay.
It caught some good attention, just given the
Yeah.
location. I think there's a lot of people that go by, so they see that kind of. That level of activity.
Yeah.
It spurs a lot of chatter, like, what the heck is going on?
we did, and I think the drone that you're talking about. There was also an incident on. Well, I had to think now, where we did it, we definitely have our drone out. I'm not positive we had the drone for that incident, but we did have. A subject who was under the influence, and was running around different properties here in Monona, and we definitely had the drone deployed looking for that subject.
Okay.
There was some concern for her welfare based on her
I
erratic
remember seeing
behavior,
that.
Wow.
yes. So that one was said, and these were all, they
They're
were,
all like, same weekend.
yes, and so that's maybe where I'm getting confused, but,
Okay,
yeah, we had quite a few incidents over the weekend.
perfect. And we'll leave building code here, but we're not gonna discuss because there's nothing to discuss right now. We'll come back to that. And keep hashing or rehashing it.
Right, the only thing I'd add is we're very supportive of both on the list here. We're very happy to end up with both of them. That's the way the cookie crumbles over the next year. Looks like we'll have a fire related meeting coming up.
Yes.
too.
And so the two that went, they were both supported,
Yes,
so then it goes back for hiring.
Right, so we have an ordered list and I assume you extended the offer to the number one candidate.
the chief did extend the offer to number one, but we still have background,
Okay,
not background, I'm sorry, we've done the background, medical.
okay. And we have one opening now.
We actually don't have an opening yet.
So this would be a pre-hire.
There's no start date yet,
Oh, okay,
because our retirement is October 2nd,
okay.
so it's coming up.
For the first retirement and then
Correct.
the second retirement
Is in November, like mid to late November,
Okay,
so they're, I mean,
so
pretty
the item,
close, yeah,
person two could be
Soon enough, yeah.
right in line, that would be wonderful.
So you could extend a second offer to that second person.
so long as we have authority to fill that position.
And when does that happen? When the person formally retires?
When the person formally retires, then I think there will be discussions about,
Okay,
I'm not sure what the current budget status, whether we will be given the approval to hire immediately for
Oh,
that second
okay.
position.
gotcha.
That's a tricky,
Tricky. Tricky is the word.
awesome. Any other general questions about reports? Seeing none, next meeting is late September, and then we need a motion for adjournment,
Move to adjourn.
and a second.
Second,
All right, you get to pick,
And
and
people listening.
all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed? All right, meeting's been adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
You too, bye-bye.
Alright.